Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. I'm very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Coming, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Are you feeling charitable? Then smash the subscribe button and the like button, and please do follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Monday. Yes, Monday's edition of the DC Daily, and there's really not much going on in terms of news, so I've decided to do this big hot take thing. So today we are going to look at the parallels of Batman Begins versus The Dark Knight and Todd Phillips' Joker movie in parallel of Birds of Prey and the emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Now, Batman Begins, if you knew me very well, you'll know that this is not just one of my favourite films of all time, it's definitely my favourite Batman movie and Batman origin movie. And, I mean, people keep on talking about so many Batman origin movies, but there hasn't actually been that many. We've had Batman, Tim Burton's Batman. Then we had Batman Begins, and then people were criticising BVS for doing the whole murder of the Waynes again. The audience need to see it. It's as simple as that. Anyway, we're not talking about BVS today. We've spoken a lot about BVS, and we will in the future. I love that movie. I think when you look at Batman Begins, and in fact, we can bring the parallel, even though that wasn't my original plan, to look at Todd Phillips' Joker movie. Batman Begins and Joker movie are similar in one essence, that they're both doing a character-driven story. It's about unraveling the character so we can understand this character, so we can understand these characters' motivations. So in Batman Begins, we see Bruce Wayne, who's been away from Gotham for a very, very long time. He's been traveling the world. He's trying to understand the criminal fraternity, right? So he went to university. He still hasn't dealt with his parents' death. And ultimately, he has a lot of rage and guilt, like anyone who loses people that they love in the real world. And then he finds Amelia Ducard, who's actually Ra's al Ghul, of course, which is one of the biggest twists in a CBM movie ever, by the way. I was so shocked. Batman Begins is brilliant in its very essence. It's got a very, very small indie movie type of cast. The music by Hans Zimmer, and there's another guy who helps him on the music, and I forgot his name actually. Is it James Newton Howard? Anyway, the two of them did a great job. One of my favourite scores of all time. But this film is a build-up, is a vacuum of how Bruce Wayne becomes Batman. We see him discover the Batcave in an awesome way. And originally, Christopher Nolan didn't want a Batmobile because he thought the whole essence of a Batmobile was too campy, and he was trying to create this gritty, realistic world, right? But Warner Brothers said, listen, we want to be selling some Batmobile toys, so come up with something. He come up with something maybe even better than the original concept of the Batmobile, although I love the Batmobile, especially the 1960s TV show version. That is just freaking awesome. But anyway, the Tumbler is just an awesome kind of, I suppose, modern-day version of the Batmobile. But this is a really deep story, and this is a story about Bruce Wayne, front and centre. It really focuses on nothing else and nobody else. So he has his interactions with the villain of the film, D'Amelia, or however you say his name, Ducard, played by the brilliant Liam Neeson, who does a great job, right? And at first, he's like this mentor, so you have no idea what's going to happen in the third act. But this film is about Christian Bale performing Bruce Wayne, and it's about getting an onion and peeling away those onion layers. And I love those type of stories. And at the beginning, you see what makes this bloke. You see that he wants to kill. He wants to exact revenge for his parents' murder. And what's even worse is he doesn't get to do it. Somebody else does, which really, really upsets Bruce. You've got Katie Holmes in this film as well, I think, who does a really solid job. Disappointing she wasn't in The Dark Knight, because I would have liked to continue the familiarity with that character. But this film is all about Christian Bale. And Christian Bale had a great reputation before Batman Begins. American Psycho. If you haven't seen it, see it. The Machinist. Wow. And he's just amazing as Bruce Wayne. He really takes it to another level, and you really believe that he's created Batman himself, and he's got intellect, and his relationship with Michael Caine's Alfred, it can be fun at times, it can be deep. Michael Caine's Alfred tells him off a lot, kicks him up the backside, but sometimes Alfred gives him crummy advice, and Bruce has to remind him that actually I am doing this for the right reasons, and it's not about revenge, but sometimes I have to go to a darker, deeper level. And so Batman Begins has everything. It has great action. It has great character development. It's a great story. And I will always say this to the day I die. For me, Batman Begins is tenfold a much better movie than The Dark Knight. Now, I love The Dark Knight, but for me, you don't get enough Christian Bale face time. This film isn't about Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne front and centre. Everybody's talking about Heath Ledger's the Joker, and in fact, it's a great version, and I understand that. But Batman Begins is about Bruce Wayne becoming Batman, and it's so good. So then we go off to the Joker movie, and Birds of Prey and the emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Birds of Prey has many issues for me. I think one of the issues for me is that it really doesn't know what it wants to be. You got this kind of girl gang kind of tone to it, haven't you? But what is it trying to say? Is it trying to say that men take the credit for all women's work? Are they trying to put together this team? I don't really think they do a good job of developing the birds, or really the group dynamic. I like Harley Quinn's relationship with the young girl. I think that's actually my favourite bit of the film. But the reason I want to compare Joker and Birds of Prey is because Joker is the parallel of Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey, and the mentality to Birds of Prey, is every single dissenting voice against the Joker movie. Every woman who came out and said this is about making excuses for violent, abusive men, when it's not. This was commentary on male mental health. In fact, this was commentary on all mental health, that society don't treat people with mental health issues in a very nice way. But not just society, governments do not have the suitable support system to help these people. And where this is set in the 80s, the attitude was much worse. So Arthur Fleck loses his ability to get his medication, to talk to this psychologist, or once a month or once a week, or however often it is. I don't think she's much help to him. But at the end of the day, he's got someone to unleash to let it all out. And all that's gone. And of course, once he loses her and the ability to take his medication, that's when things go really bad. And this is a guy who's trying his best. He has dreams of becoming a comedian. You know, he really wants to make his dreams come true. And he's got a childlike mentality too. This is a man who should be looked after, but instead, this is a man looking after his mother, his disabled, sick, mentally ill mother. It's like me, right? I'm not saying I have the issues of Arthur Fleck, but, you know, one of my responsibilities in my everyday life is to support and help physically my disabled father, as well as writing scripts and, you know, going off to meetings and doing this, which is just fun, of course, and my social media stuff as well, which again is just voluntarily. But that's the thing. And these kind of things grind you after a while. And I'm not saying I'm going to become the Joker, but I really related with that character. I was bullied as a young man. I had very little confidence as a young man. And to see what happens to Arthur really rings true to me. And I can see, you know, it's like Lex Luthor in Smallville, the way Michael unraveled that character. You can understand why he becomes what he becomes. You're not making excuses for him, but you understand. And it's important to understand. But the extreme left majority, before they even saw this film, were desperate for this film to be a fail. Because let me be clear, if Todd Phillips was developing a movie, writing and directing a movie about a standalone Elseworld Harley Quinn origin story, they would have loved it. If this was a Martha Wayne Joker origin story, they would have loved it. But it was about a man. And this is where we are now. Jesus Christ have just announced that Velma from Scooby-Doo is a lesbian, even though she actually had a relationship with Shaggy. So this is where we are now. We can't escape anymore. We can't just enjoy the stuff we've always loved. There has to be some real-world political commentary. You go on any thread now, any comments on a YouTube video, when someone's just talking about the movie, it gets political. Someone was complaining that they did a Doctor Who video and all people were talking about is political ideologies. This is where we are now. And they did it with Joker. And this is the essence of why Joker movie made over $1 billion. It's a fine movie. But is it a movie that I expected to make $1 billion, over $1 billion? No, nobody did. People thought this would make a solid maybe 400 to 600, 700 at best million dollars globally. But this made over $1 billion because they were telling people it was a bad movie before they saw it. And what happens when you tell people not to do something? They do it. They don't even know the mentality, how to destroy something, how to cancel something. And then Todd Phillips came out and said, you can't really do comedy anymore because of woke culture, which didn't help him out. And I was surprised he came out with that. That was an interesting thing to say. But he's right, by the way, he's right. And so when you look at Joker and then you look at Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey movie, the Birds of Prey movie is about extreme left commentary, which is not very interesting if you don't swing that way. But everyone empathises with Arthur Fleck. They don't like him. They don't agree with what he does and all the people that he kills. Right? That's not the point. But you understand how a character got there. In Superman the movie, you see him as a young baby on Krypton, then in Smallville, then in Metropolis. You get how he got there and you understand how all this is very difficult on the character. It's the same with Man of Steel. It's not about making excuses for characters and saying why they do what they do. It's about saying, I understand you. I understand how you could have got there because we, humanity, let you down. There are millions of people, not just men and women around the world, and let's talk about transgender people, all people, not just men and women, who are affected by mental illness. And society isn't empathetic or sympathetic. And this is the commentary Joker movie makes. But without all the fuss around it, it doesn't make $1 billion. Without all the fuss around Captain Marvel, it doesn't make $1 billion. This is what studios do now. They try and create this toxicity around films, that maybe they think won't make as much money. Now, nobody created the toxicity around Joker apart from the crazy extreme left, Scott Mendelson, who works for Forbes, who talks about box office and films. He's very extreme left, and he was liking posts and put-downs about Joker movie, right? And of course, they didn't cancel the film. It actually succeeded because of what they were saying. So when we look at all these films, when we look at Batman Begins and Dark Knight and Joker and Birds of Prey, we see four very different movies. We see Batman Begins, which tells a very serious, in-depth story of how Bruce Wayne becomes Batman. And then you look at The Dark Knight, which is a very different film. It's about how heroes react to an impossible threat, to insanity. In a lot of ways, The Dark Knight has commentary on what's going on today. And then when you look at Joker movie and the commentary about how people treat mentally ill people, and then you look at Birds of Prey, which is actually the extreme leftist culture that tried to cancel Joker. And that's why I put it in there. And it really isn't much of a movie. I understand some people like Birds of Prey. I don't think it's a... If you take out the boo-hoo, it's all men's fault that women have got it bad, then I think you've got a bona fide, interesting film. But that commentary, there was no need for it. And if you're going to make that commentary, you don't make it again and again and again. But it was about toxic masculinity. And for that reason, I'm out. As they say on one show, which I forgot what it's called. And there you have it. David Ayer has been talking again. He's been talking about Harley and the Joker. So apparently, in a kind of novelisation of Suicide Squad, Harley actually was giving Joker electric shock therapy or something like that, because that's the way in the olden days they used to treat mental illness. So there is that as well. He also spoke about the multiverse strategy in support of it as well. And it leads me to think that he knows that he's a part of this, that he's got a role to play. Definitely his cut, the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad, is going to get done. But what do you think about political ideologies in films? What do you think of Batman Begins? How would you rate it via The Dark Knight? I know most of you prefer The Dark Knight. And Joker movie, would it still have made $1 billion if cancel culture didn't try, ultimately, to cancel it and fail? Comment down below. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with even more DC Daily. See you again soon.